Let us talk today about can openers. So this is my trusty Brabantia standard can opener. Brabantia Classic, I think it's called. This can opener has served me very well. I think we've had two of these. This particular model, this is the second one in about 30 years. So this one's lasted probably about 15 years. And that's pretty good, I think, for a kitchen utensil. And as you know, I do prefer to use a can opener even on a can unlike this one, even when there's a pull tab top. Just my preference. Just find a can opener is a better way to open a can. Anyway, this one, and I won't actually do it, this one clamps onto the top of the can here like this, and you know, you wind it. I don't know if I even need to explain this. It cuts the top of the can out there, leaving a non-sharp rim, but the piece it cuts out has rather sharp edges. Never really been a problem for me. There is a similar design of can opener to this, but not this one, where it's attached to the can that way round, and it actually cuts through the side of the can here, and the piece that comes off is not sharp, but it leaves the rim sharp. This can opener definitely doesn't do that. I have tried. And indeed, the instructions on Brabantia's own YouTube channel show it being used in this top cutting orientation, not the side cutting. Now, I'm kind of making this video because I think people perhaps wrongly assume that I'm obsessed with can openers, and I've kind of become obsessed as a result of people asking me about can openers. Anyway, there's this one, which is a toucan opener. It's for opening toucans. This is exactly the same mechanism as the Brabantia Classic, but the engineering is just not as good. There's a lot more play in all of the parts of the mechanism. As a result, disappointingly, the toucan can opener doesn't really open cans very well. I have tried using it in the toucan specials that I do on Weird Stuff in a Can. And again, I'm not going to open this can of tomatoes today. Same mechanism, it clamps onto the side. This one I found just doesn't grip the side of the can adequately, and so you'd be turning this and it's not turning the can. So sadly, the toucan can opener, no good. The other can opener I have tried, because many people recommended it, is this one. This is OXO Good Grips, and this can opener comes with a recommendation from lots of people who believe it's far superior to other forms of can opener. This one, I can't remember exactly how you do it on this. It clamps onto the can like this. So this little bit here clamps onto the inside of that rim. This little gear, this little textured roller. And then that clamps down tight as you wind it. And then there's a blade that's actually kind of sitting on top of this rubber bit here, and the blade cuts right through this seam. It cuts through this rolled seam on the can, and the result is that you get no sharp bit on the can and no sharp bit on the lid, and actually the lid can be sat back on top of the can and used, you know, if you want to store half of the contents of the can, which is a whole nother thing because people get uptight about storing food in cans, apparently, anyway. But if you want to put that back on as a lid to keep flies out while you're, you know, working or whatever, you can. However, this can opener has a dark side, and that dark side is that when I used it to open a can of Fray Bentos canned pie, it deposited a razor sharp needle of metal in my food. And the reason was that actually when you use this can opener, because it's cutting through the side seam here, there's no point where the lid pops off naturally, or not always anyway. And so it's very easy to continue winding this thing and end up cutting round more than once. And if you do, that second cut is not necessarily aligned with the first one, and it can shave off slivers of metal from the rim of the can. Now, when I've mentioned that in the past, people have called me an idiot for not paying attention to the fact that I've gone round more than once. But the point is that with this can opener, you don't go around more than once, because by the time you go around once, you get back to the start, and there is audible evidence that you've got to the end, because it goes pop, this bit detaches and either falls in or flips up or whatever. This one doesn't do any of that, so you can just go round more than once. But apparently I'm an idiot for not paying very careful attention to where I started, and not paying very careful attention to the fact that I've been round more than one full circuit. I don't think that's really my fault. And I'll tell you why, because here's the thing. If it was necessary, if what you're supposed to do is go around only exactly once, or else you get metal needles in your food, surely there should be something in instructions for this to say, warning, don't do that. And I tend to think that also a can opener that, when just ever so slightly misused, deposits metal needles in your food is a bad design. It doesn't have a margin of safety. So yeah, anyway, that's the can openers I already have. These are two that are no real use to me. That's the one I use most commonly. However, on a trip to Spain just recently, I picked up some additional can openers, and I thought we'd give these a try. So I've got 3 things. This one's similar mechanism to the Brabantia. It looks like a good one, very nicely engineered. Not much play on the mechanism. Nice close tolerance between that blade and that gear. Seems to be solidly constructed. I think this one's going to serve me well. This is the older design of can opener, and this one you just kind of, well, actually let's get it out of the packaging and we'll talk about how it works. So this one costs €1.30, and this one you kind of stab it into the can here, and then you use this bit here to just kind of lever your way around and bring the blade up and cut with a sort of lifting action. Really old-fashioned design, that one. And of course this one also has a bottle opener there for popping crown corks, and a corkscrew. Probably actually better if it sticks out that side. A corkscrew for opening wine bottles, although a lot of wine bottles seem to be screw caps these days. And then there's this one, which is probably one of the most basic designs of can opener you can get. And this is similar to the ones you get in military rations. I can't remember the name. Is it P38 or something like that? Something like that. Anyway, and so this one, that little bit there pops up like that. And this one, you latch it onto the side of the can there, and that little shoulder gets under the rim, and you then turn it like that, and that digs in, that blade digs into the can, so like that, and then you just repeat that all the way around, rocking it back and forth to cut into the can. So this one cuts downwards into the can, this one cuts upwards. So that's that. So we got 3 different designs of can opener, 3 different mechanisms actually of action. How much was this one? So that was €1.30 as well. So these two were €1.30. This one, which obviously is a little bit nicer and better constructed, was €7.50. So high expectations for this one. There's also this, which I think might have a can opener on it, but I won't know till I've opened it. So this is a travel knife, fork and spoon set. I've got one a bit like this already, which I'll show you. So this is a thing I've had for years and years. I bought this from, I think, Banggood, or actually they might have sent it to me for free when I was back in the business of reviewing products. And so it's a folding knife that has a spoon, a fork and a knife. Now, how is that useful? Well, because once you've opened it like that, it comes apart. So you can either use fork and spoon, or you can use knife and fork. Except the problem with this one is that's a tiny fork. That's like a cake fork, and that's like a teaspoon. So I tend to think that whilst this is a great idea, This is really the kind of dessert version of a compact camping knife, fork and spoon set. This thing, by the way, once it's all folded back together like this, that folding action is what locks the two halves of the thing back together. So I think this is the same idea, but this is like the grown-up sibling. So let's see what this one's like. This, by the way, cost, what's it called? Conditioning utensils. This one, I think, was €4.30. So let's see what we got. So fork comes out, yeah. So it comes apart in the same manner. There is something else in there which we'll investigate in a moment. So fork and spoon, and that's a nice size spoon. Actually, it's still smaller than a dessert spoon, but that's a spoon big enough to be seriously used. And so you can have fork and spoon if you were perhaps eating rice or something like that. You can have knife and fork, and it's a interesting knife. It's got an edge on it, not a desperately sharp one. Let's have a look and see how. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to carve anything with that, but it's got a nice breadth of blade there, so you could use that for spreading butter. And knife and fork, they are a bit straight actually. The fork itself is a bit, those prongs kind of stick out that way, whereas normally I'd expect a table fork to have prongs that angle down, but of course that's because it has to fit together. So knife and fork, fork and spoon are the options, and then there's this other piece here which really doesn't want to come out. That bottle opener, I don't know, maybe it's meant to be kept in there. Maybe you use it, I mean, you could just open a bottle that way, so maybe that doesn't come out. Maybe that pin there goes through the other part of the metal here. I don't know, it might do actually. So I'm going to assume that's by design, and I'm just an idiot for not noticing that. This one, by the way, also has that smaller bottle opening blade with two different things here, because this is also a can opener. So this one, you can open a can like this. So you can catch that little bit there underneath the edge of the can and just cut all the way around like that. Maybe use it in the... No, I don't think it does work in the upward cutting direction. I have a feeling I tried opening a can with this one and it just was a disaster. Anyway, that's the unboxings and unpackings and musings on all of those. What I'm going to do over the next few days, because I don't want to just go and open a bunch of random cans arbitrarily, we will test out all of these can openers, especially the new ones, and we'll see how they function. So that's coming next. Okay, test number one. Well, I have a need to open this can of tomatoes, so we're going to try this traditional can opener and see how we get on. So I believe, and it's been a long time since I used one of this design, by the way, that what we do is we place that on the rim there and then give it a bit of a bop, and it makes a little hole there, and then we just push like that, and then we go all the way around the edge like this. So we're kind of pushing forward at the same time as lifting up. This is pretty much how cans in cartoon strips look when they're opened. You know, a lid that's still kind of attached and a serrated sharp edge on there, plus also not exactly a safe edge on the inside of the rim. Anyway, that was quite easy, and it's very simple. There's no moving parts to go wrong on this one, so I think that's the key advantage. And it opened the can with relative ease. I would say that's not particularly friendly for perhaps if you've got arthritic fingers or something like that, but it worked. Today we're going to test the can opener on this thing. Now this is not one that I bought in Spain this time. I got this on some website years ago. We're going to try this can opener. I'm not very confident that's going to work, so if it doesn't, we've got this one as a backup. We'll test this one anyway, but we may end up testing this one today if this doesn't work. For this, we've got a can of Heinz peri peri beans, and have beans on toast for breakfast. So this one, I believe, you can't go in this way and lever up like you do on the other traditional can opener. I think that piece is meant to catch underneath the rim there, and we're meant to be able to go like this all the way round. Something like this. Well, wow, it does work, but we're going to be a long while with that. Now, where this is a pull tab can, what we're actually doing is detaching the pull tab as well. So I'm going to switch over to this one now, see if we get a better result with this. The problem with this one is unfolding it, actually. So getting your fingernail under this blade without getting this blade under your fingernail is the challenge. So this one hooks onto the side like that, and then we kind of do a twisting action, I believe, like that. So this is quite uncomfortable, mainly because actually what I need to do to hold it to turn it, my finger is on this sharp piece here. I imagine that's... I don't know why these can openers always have two bottle openers. Whenever you find a bottle opener on a can opener, you nearly always find there's two iterations of it. Same on my Brabantia. So this bit here opens a bottle, but so does the other side. I don't know if that's just because it means it's going to take twice as long to wear out. Wow, this is really not great. I think the best you could say for this one is that it's compact. So not enjoying this experience at all. But we're nearly there. Perseverance will see us through. There we go. Okay, there's a bit here I haven't cut. Now, of course, I could just pull the pull tab on this one because it is a pull tab can, but we're here now. So there we go. That worked for certain values of worked. That was not at all comfortable. I mean, I think the only advantage, as I say, with this one, you could say, is that that would fold up and go in your wallet or something. So it's very compact. You could put that in an emergency kit or something. But that was not fun at all. And it's actually hurt my finger. But we got there in the end. Now, in order to test this, which has not got a can opener on it, I'm going to use this to eat my beans on toast. Right, so toast. I'm not going to bother buttering it this time because it's going to be smothered in beans anyway. So I'm going to attempt to use this knife and fork combo to do the entire meal here. So I suppose that's going to include cutting your toast. Oh, it's a really nice sharp knife. It cuts very well. I do my toast tessellation thing. I just find that sometimes fits on the plate a little bit better. Beans on top. Right, to the table. Okay, well, here we go. Still a bit on the small side, that fork. The knife is okay. The beans, by the way, a little bit of spice there. Yeah, quite nice, sort of mild chili and cumin flavour. Now here is a drawback. If you're right-handed like me and you want to try to use that fork for cutting, you can't. So for a lefty, that would work fine. Because we're working against the hinge. But for a right-hander, you can't use the fork for cutting. They could have just done everything the other way round and it would have still been fine. You'd have had to hold the knife that way and then, but that would have been fine because the bowl of the spoon is it's actually more comfortable to hold that way than that way, I think. But never mind. That fork is too small. I mean, I know it's got to fold up into this thing, but that fork is still smaller than I would find completely comfortable. But it is usable. Now this does bring up another potential issue with this set. The mere fact that it folds means that if I'm not careful, food is going to get into all these little crevices here. And that'll be quite difficult to actually wash properly. So I suppose that is just a general drawback with the concept of a folding knife, fork and spoon set like this. And just to show you the other set here, which is, I describe them as like a dessert fork. That's, well, let's actually see how many beans I can get on there before they start falling off. I can line up 5 beans on the fork before they start falling off. So this is just too small. Nice idea. Now what we can't do is have a knife and spoon. Actually, and for something like that, that might have worked better, because the spoon, I'm just going to go and wipe that knife and see if the spoon and fork is better. So we put away the knife and deploy the spoon. Now what we can do with the spoon is cut. In fact, we might not even need the fork at all. So perhaps, yeah, I mean, I think actually spoon and fork works a bit better than knife and fork for this set. I'll save that bit of toast. Yeah, I know. Well, that got the job done, but that was kind of awkward. Time to pay the toast tax. Good go. It's a different day, and I have need of a can of tomatoes for a different thing I'm cooking. Time to test out this one, which I'm most hopeful about. Let's see how we get on. It is a pull-tab can, of course, but as I say, my preference is to use a can opener. And that seems like it works really well. It's gripping the can quite tightly. We've gone all the way around, and there was a little click. The lid has detached quite neatly. In fact, it's cut, I would say, cleaner than usual. Almost not a sharp edge there, actually, just because of the cleanness of the cut. Of course, I'm not going to run my finger along there just to test it, but that doesn't feel like a jagged sharp edge. Pretty good. Could this one replace the Brabantia? Maybe. So just to round things out a little bit more, I was in a charity shop the other day and I found this. This is a different kind of can opener. This is the side opening can opener, and this is the type that very often people tell me I should be using this one in that mode, but they are different. This one has the blade and the gear that drives the can are parallel. The top opening kind has always got the blade inclined from the gear that turns the can. I think there are versions of this, and maybe this is one of them, where you could use that in a side opening orientation. Perhaps we'll try that in this video, perhaps we won't. Well, I don't think you can, because the spacing of the gear and the blade is not the same in these two items. There needs to be a little bit of offset here to accommodate the rim of the can. Anyway, £1.50 I paid for that in a charity shop, so I think we'll take that down to the kitchen and give that a try. Now, one thing that's become apparent just on arrival here in the kitchen is that I think this can opener probably doesn't work with pull-tab cans, because that gear has to engage on the inside, and there's a runner thing that goes on the top of the can here as well, and that's going to interfere with that pull-tab ring. Fortunately though, that's not the can I'm opening today. This is mackerel in tomato sauce, taste of the oceans. This one just goes on like that. We engage it by squeezing, and then we turn that handle, and when it's finished, well, yeah, it didn't attach completely cleanly, so we end up with a lid that's mostly safe. There's no sharp edge there. There is a little sharp bit there that it didn't cut through perfectly, but the top edge of the can is now the sharp part. The bit you're not throwing away immediately is the sharp part, and I think that's the drawback of this style of can opener, although it is very easy to use, and that did cut very nice and cleanly. But yeah, that edge is sharp, and that's the bit we still have to interact with further. So yeah, like I say, I think that is the downside of this style of can opener. On the other hand, it's very simple, got a pretty kind of solid, definite action to it. It also has a tendency, because it's cutting through the side of the can, to cut off little ribbons of the label. We had one of these in the past actually, and it cut off a little ribbon of the label, and sometimes you end up with that in your food. Not a big deal. Yeah, there's a bit of it there. Not a big deal because it's only paper, and of course you could remove the label before you use the can opener, but that's an extra step. Now, one thing I have noticed about this one that I don't like is this hollow plastic shell. Water gets in there when you wash it, and if water's getting inside this shell and not completely evaporating immediately or not draining away, that means mold is going to grow inside of there. We've seen that before with spatulas. So that's a potential downside of this design, or at least this iteration of this design. I think it probably wouldn't be right to make this video and not give this OXO Good Grips a little test, because this video is all about can openers and testing them. So even though this one's not new, it's not been used that much either, we're going to give this a try. I've got a Fray Bentos steak and kidney pie, which is oddly appropriate because actually the OXO Good Grips is one of the 2 can openers that is actually explicitly recommended for opening these cans. These cans, some people find them tricky, and inferior can openers won't open these cleanly. And yeah, Good Grips is one of the ones that these guys recommend. Anyway, here's where we go. So I'm going to start at the bottom here, and I'm going to make a note of where I start here so that we perhaps get a chance to avoid that whole thing about metal needles. So just turning it has clamped it onto the can, and now we wind it round like this. Now, one thing to say, this is actually quite a stiff action here. Range, the Good Grips range is specifically tailored for people with problematic, grip and so on, but that's actually quite stiff to turn. Right, we've been round once, and like I say, nothing's popped up. Nothing's there to indicate that we've made a complete turn. The lid is still apparently in place, and so it would be possible to continue going round, except we are done. And so if I turn this back the other way to detach that now, or maybe that was, oh, and there's a little pincer thing there, which I think is for, yeah, grabbing the lid and lifting it off. And there we go. So the lid comes off, and the lid hasn't got a sharp edge that, well, that edge is sharp, but you're not going to get your fingers onto that sharp edge. And the rim of the can is not sharp, and again, there is a sharp bit slightly under the rim here, or sharp-ish bit. I think if you rubbed your finger along that, you could still cut yourself, but there isn't a sharp bit that you can kind of press down onto here. Anyway, so that's the Good Grips, and it opened it this time without apparently making needles. But yeah, hopefully that demonstrates the issue. Once you've gone round once, you don't necessarily know that you've gone round once. There's no explicit sign to denote that's happened. Supposedly with these, again, one of the advantages is you can place the lid back on, although in this case it's such a large lid that taking it off has warped it. So that one wouldn't fit back on. And there is this whole thing about, which is an internet nuance failure. There are people out there who seem to believe that food left in cans quickly becomes poisonous, or immediately becomes poisonous. It's very strange, but as I say, it's internet nuance failure mostly. Anyway, so that was the Good Grips. Okay, another day, another lunch, and today we've got Chaos a la Madrileña, Madrid-style tripe stew. This is another thing I brought back from Spain. One of actually only a very few things I brought back from Spain, but including some can openers and this. I love the Spanish tripe stew. Today we're going to try to open this with the toucan opener, just really to complete the testing of the video. So this one is a top opening can opener like that, but already I'm squeezing that as hard as it'll go and it hasn't pierced the can, but we'll give it a try anyway. It does actually appear to be working. So on that can it did work. On other cans I've tried in the past, it just didn't quite grip the rim. This geared toothed wheel didn't quite grip the rim, but that seemed to be okay. And that is my gelatinous tripe stew, which I'm going to have for lunch with a bit of crusty bread or something. Anyway, so yeah, despite my earlier assertion that this can opener doesn't work very well, it did in that particular instance, but experience has proven this to be less than 100% reliable. Now there is the question of top opening versus side opening can openers with respect to hygiene. Of course, and I'm not going to go into a massive depth about that, but of course with a top opening can opener like this, it is pushing down into the food, and it is potentially pushing down anything that's on the top of the can into the can. With a side opening thing, I suppose it is doing the same thing with pushing things that are on the side of the can into the can. The OXO Good Grips is the only one that doesn't penetrate the actual can. I tend to think nearly all of that is moot anyway, because certainly is in the context of anything that's going to be heated up to piping hot. Any bacterial contamination that might be on the top of this lid is going to be destroyed by, heating this to piping hot before serving. I think it's probably time to go back to Studio Shrimp now for the summation of all of those can opener experiences. Okay, time for the summary. Now, this is going to be highly subjective because a lot of this is just my opinion and my views on how these things work for me. These are the can openers arranged in ranked order in terms of best versus worst. These two are in joint first place, by the way, the Brabantia Classic and the new one that's the same style of can opener. And of course I scored these the best. This is the can opener I use virtually every day, but it's not a case of I like it because I use it every day. It's a case of I use it every day because I like it. If I was already unhappy with this can opener, I would have replaced it with something else a long time ago. So yes, that is bias, but it's also selection. The Brabantia Classic, or actually I think this is Brabantia Essential, same mechanism, different style of handles is the only difference, I think. This one doesn't have all of the same things as the Brabantia. In fact, when it's open like that, it does feel like there's a bit of play on the mechanism, but it's got this post here that locates into this hole there, and when it's in the closed position, there is no play because that locates it in two different places, and there's like a taper on that thing there that just locks into place. Interestingly, I did mention earlier that both of these have got that double bevel on the cutting wheel, and part of the reason why it's got that double bevel is the inner bevel fits the internal curve of the lid of the can. Anyway, so yeah, those two I think take joint first place. Next is this one, the simple old stabby can opener. I think probably just because it is so simple, there's no moving parts to go wrong, and it opened the can with great ease. There were sharp edges all over the place, so it is inferior to these because of that. But yeah, if I was going to put one in a backpack or something like that, or in a picnic bag or whatever, I think it probably would be that one, because also it's lightweight as well. Next is the toucan can opener. Now in theory this one should be as good as the Brabantia, but it just isn't. And because there's one particular design choice here that makes it different. So With the Brabantia, you've got this scissor hinge here, but on the other side there's another plate, and that stops there being play between these two parts, these two moving parts. So this part here, well, this part here actually rather, is moving in between two other plates, and that means that it has rigidity when it's opening the can. When it's clamped in place, there's just no wiggle and play. This one doesn't appear to have that. It's only just got the two halves of the mechanism, and as a result there is just play, and that I think is why it doesn't grip the edge of the can properly with this knurled or toothed wheel. And yeah, although it performed okay today, this one has been embarrassing in terms of its slippage on the can in the past. Apart from that, it's a shame, because that would be a perfect can opener for my toucan specials, because it is styled to look like a toucan. Perhaps for my toucan special episodes of Weird Stuff in a Can, I will need to have this can opener and another one standing by in backup. So 2 can openers for toucan specials, including the toucan can opener, if you understood that. Next, the Culinaire Magic Can. Now, this one performed okay, and I was quite happy with the way that, even though it was a side cutting one, the top edge of that can was not razor sharp, it was just cut off straight. So it was a cut edge, but it wasn't a sharpened cut edge. It seemed to work okay. The thing I don't like about this one, well, I just don't like the side cutting thing in general. I would prefer a top cutting can opener, just because then the bit that you're continuing to interact with is not the sharp bit. But also, I don't like this hollow plastic body. If you immerse it in water to wash it, that gets water inside this hollow plastic body, and although it does dry out, it will dry out very slowly. And I guarantee that if we used this and washed it every day and took that apart after a year, it would be horrific inside. It would be mouldy. So I don't really like that. Next, OXO Good Grips, and there are a few reasons why I don't really get on with this one. One is that actually it shares that hollow plastic body. In fact, I've washed this and dried it, and there's still water shaking out of this hollow plastic body. So that's bad for the same reason that this is bad. Also, yeah, bad experience with it depositing shards of metal in my food. And also, I don't think it really does the thing it's meant to do. These are meant to be really ergonomic devices, including for people with weakness of the hands. And it's meant to be really good for gripping and so on. But that handle is surprisingly stiff to turn compared to all the others on the table here. So maybe that would wear in after time, but that wouldn't really help if you started off from a position of having weakened hands. You wouldn't get a chance to wear it in because it would be uncomfortable to use. Not quite sure how well this would work with left-handed people either. So if that's held in the right hand, I mean, I think it'll work, but it does seem to have some handedness to it. I suppose it's fair to say that these are right-handed can openers too, because they go into the top of the can that way. You can't use them that way up and turn them with this hand. I won't take off any points for handedness, although if I did, it would come off of all of those equally, probably include all of them except for that one, in fact, equally. This one is ambidextrous. That would work for lefties or righties. And then in last place is the fake P38. Now, this shouldn't be a criticism of the P38 can opener as such, because this is not one of those. This is a copy of that design. Things I didn't like about this one, well, actually, I've just noticed now, this pressing has left a significant burr on these underside edges here. So there's a kind of sharp burr on there. That's not good. But also, it wasn't that easy to pick up this blade because it's sprung and it's stiff. There is a risk of injuring yourself with that blade in trying to get that blade upright. And then it wasn't very comfortable to use because of the way where you have to hold it. You have to have your finger against this bit here. If they just left that and not cut that piece out, it would have been a lot more comfortable to use. But worst of all, it just didn't work very well. It just kept on, this little corner here didn't really catch the lip properly, and so it kept on jumping off the rim. It just didn't quite work. So that one is in last place. And of course these two, and this one obviously is a can opener, but I'm not going to put it in this ranking as a can opener. I think if I did, it would be down here. Probably joint last place with that guy. But this is a knife, fork and spoon set. This one, the only thing that's really wrong with it is just too small. Just not that useful. This one, slightly more useful size. And I did find it okay to eat my beans on toast with. But the significant flaw with this one is you can't use that fork for cutting, just because it's not a locking mechanism. It's just got a sprung detent there. But you can't use that for cutting and just using a fork, because it folds up when you try, if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, you're okay. So in summary, nothing I really tested here today is going to make me change my choice of can opener, which is still my firm favourite, is the Brabantia Essential or Brabantia Classic. I don't suppose that's very surprising. As I say, I open a lot of cans, both for videos here and just because for cooking. And like I say, if this wasn't working well for me, I would have already replaced it. So there we go, that was it. So do you have different preferences? Did I forget to review some kind of can opener? Did I forget to talk about some of the features of these can openers? Do let me know in the comments, or anything else you want to say. That's all we got for today though, so thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.